Hi everyone. I have a new story for us to read. It's called Tyrannosaurus Drip and it was written by Julia Donaldson. We know some good books by her, don't we? And illustrated by David Roberts. That means David Roberts did the pictures. What do you think it's about? Tyrannosaurus Drip. I think it might be about dinosaurs, but a drip? I don't think Tyrannosauruses are drips. Let's find out. Oh, this is a lovely picture. Those dinosaurs, can you see? They don't look like Tyrannosauruses. Let's find out. In a swamp beside a river, where the land was thick with veg, lived a herd of duck-billed dinosaurs who roamed the water's edge. And they hooted up with rivers, and they hooted up with reeds, and they hooted up with bellyfuls of juicy water weeds. Oh, yeah. There is a reed for these plants. There are some weeds. This must be what they eat. All these water plants. These guys, they don't look quite the same. Now across the rushy river, on a hill the other side, lived a mean Tyrannosaurus with his grim and grisly bride. And they shouted, "Up with hunting!" And they shouted, "Up with war!" And they shouted, "Up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur!" No, I think they eat for other dinosaurs. But the two Tyrannosauruses, so grisly, mean and grim, couldn't catch the duck-billed dinosaurs because they couldn't swim. And they muttered, "Down with water," and they muttered, "Down with wet," and they muttered, "What a shame that bridges aren't invented yet." If there was a bridge, they could get across the river and eat the duck-billed dinosaurs. Good job that river's there. Oh, there's a new dinosaur. It's a little a little blue one. Now a little Compsognathus, but for short we'll call her Comp, found a duck-bill egg and stole it from a nest beside the swamp. We used the word swamp, didn't we, in our rhyme? Spelt with an A, but it makes an O sound. And she swam with it and ran with it and murmured, "Clever me." Murmured is a nice quiet way of talking. And won't the baby Comps be thrilled with duck-bill egg 4? She hasn't finished her sentence yet. Look, someone's trodden on her tail. With duck-bill egg 4. T! T for T-Rex. She dropped the egg in terror and went running for her life from the mean Tyrannosaurus and his grim and grisly wife. Now the mother T had great big jaws, and great enormous legs, but her brain was rather little, and she couldn't count her eggs. And she sang, "Hatch out my terrors with your scaly little tails and your spiky little toothies and your scary little nails." Can you see the eggs? They look like Tyrannosaurus legs. Out hatched babies 1 and 2 as perfect as could be, but Mother T was horrified by baby number 3. Look who it is. And she grumbled, "He looks weedy," and she grumbled, "He looks weak," and she grumbled, "What long arms! And look, his mouth "He just needs feeding up," said Dad, and gave the babe some meat. The first two gulped and guzzled, but the third refused to eat. And he said, "I'm really sorry." And he said, "I simply can't." And he said, "This meat looks horrible. I'd rather eat a plant." "A plant?" yelled Mum in horror, and Dad said, "Get a grip." His sisters found a name for him, Tyrannosaurus Drip. And they shouted, "Up with hunting!" And they shouted, "Up with war!" And they shouted, "Up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur." Poor Tyrannosaurus Drip tried hard to sing along, but the others yelled, "You silly Drip, you've got the words all wrong." For he hooted, "Down with hunting!" And he hooted, "Down with war!" And he hooted, "Down with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur." Drip's sisters soon grew big enough to hunt with Dad and Mum, but they turned on Drip and told him, "You're not fierce enough to come." And he cried, "They've gone without me." And he cried, "Alack a day." And he cried, "This doesn't feel like home. I'm going to run away." Poor sad little Drip. Oh. So he ran off to the river. Can you guess what's going to happen? Where is he going to end up? So he ran off to the river, where he saw a lovely sight. A herd of duck-billed dinosaurs all hooting with delight. And they hooted, "Up with rivers!" And they hooted, "Up with reeds!" And they hooted, "Up with bellyfuls of juicy water reeds." As he stood there on the bank, a sudden urge took hold of him, and he jumped into the water and discovered he could swim. And the duckbills came to greet him by the rushy river's edge, and they hooted, "Nice to see you!" And they hooted, "Have some veg!" Oh, look, there he is, swimming along. And they've brought some vegetables, some water weeds for him to eat. And Drip, who was delighted that they hadn't run away, ate bellyfuls of water weeds and played with them all day. Then he gazed into the river and he asked them, "Who, oh who, is that creature in the water?" And they laughed and said, "It's you." Oh, can you see his reflection? So now he knows he's a duck-billed dinosaur, doesn't he? That night, the lightning crackled. Oh, it's all dark and scary on this page. That night the lightning crackled and a storm blew down a tree, and it fell across the river, and the T's yelled out, "Yippee!" What can we do now? It's made our bridge. And they shouted, "Up with hunting!" And they shouted, "Up with war!" And they shouted, "Up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur!" Oh no. I missed a page. No, I haven't. There they are. Drip's sisters stepped onto the bridge, but then began to frown. For in front of them stood Drip, who yelled, "Look out! Look down!" What's he doing? And they looked into the water, and they each let out a yelp. "Oh!" And one cried out, "Water monster!" And the other one cried, "Help!" Are there water monsters in the river? What do you think? That's right, they're not. They're reflections of the Tyrannosauruses. They're not very clever, are they? Their mother scolded nonsense, and she joined them on the tree. Then she looked into the water and exclaimed, "Good gracious me!" The three of them stood trembling, and Dad said, "Get a grip. You're all as drippy as Tyrannosaurus drip." He strode onto the bridge and scoffed, "I bet there's nothing there." Then he looked into the water and he jumped into the air. Oh my goodness. 1, 2, 3 heavy dinosaurs, and now comes Dad and he's jumped. What's going to happen? Have you guessed? Let's find out. And how the duckbills hooted when he landed with a crash, and the tree bridge broke, and 4 Tyrannosauruses went splash. And spluttering and clinging to the branches of a tree, they went whooshing down a waterfall and all the way to sea. That's the end of those Tyrannosauruses. You see, there's that little blue dinosaur, the Compsognathus. And the duckbills hooted happily, and they hooted, "Hip, hip, 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 hooray!" for the heroic one and only Duckbill Drip. Wow, that was a happy ending for the duckbill dinosaurs. Not such a happy ending for those mean Tyrannosauruses, but I'm quite glad it ended like that. Are you?